I am Malika Ramsey. This week we focus on what some may call a recent upsurge in crimes. Well, when I say crimes, I mean robbery under arms. And of course, to discuss that with me is the leader of the People's National Congress Reform and leader of the opposition, Brigadier the Honorable David Granger. And this is one of the topics. It's very, very appropriate to have him discuss that because I call him one of the security experts in our nation. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Malika.
All right. This past week, we have seen a sudden, what some may say, is a sudden attack on businesses by criminals, gun-toting criminals. And the society, especially our entrepreneurs, our business persons, they're currently, in a sense, living in fear because you don't know what's next, who's next, if there's a chosen business or if these things are planned and certain businesses are being targeted. Why do you think, Mr. Granger, that there seems to be this sudden upsurge in attacking business persons and robbery under arms?
Thanks, Malika. I'm glad you used the word "it seems to be" because very ordinary citizens have been victims of violent crime for several years, but they don't have the voice that the business community has. But now the business community is under pressure. They run to the government, they run to the media to complain. But throughout Mr. Rohi's tenure as Minister of Home Affairs, that's over 6 years now, we have had a very high rate of crime, particularly violent crime, and as you mentioned, armed robberies. Right now, surprisingly, it is not necessarily higher than previous years. It's bad enough. It's been bad enough for the years, but what has happened now, you're quite right that the businesses seem to be the focus of attack, particularly this week. And I think that's why we've heard so much noise. But several ordinary citizens have been under attack, but the ministry has never been so concerned. What we see happening is the end product of a series of errors by the Ministry of Home Affairs. And that is one of the reasons why we said that Minister Clement Rohi is not the person for the job. Now, you must ask yourselves, what is the cause? Not just, it is true that you can look at a newspaper and see that, yes, we've got a lot of armed robberies, but you cannot solve the armed robberies by putting up closed circuit television and putting more patrols on the road. It may seem to be a remedy, but in fact it's illusory. What you need to do is look at the causes. The causes are essentially the gun running, bringing illegal weapons into the country, and the large number of unemployed people, the social problems that we have in the country. Now, the administration finds it difficult to deal with the gun running and difficult to deal with the social problems. And what we're seeing in Guyana today are the consequences of maladministration. So I think the two issues that we must examine are, one, the actual crime that the government knows takes place, that is gun running, and why there is still gun running in 2013. And secondly, what is being done about the social problems which give rise to these crimes.
How would David Granger or David Granger administration deal with the gun running problem?
First of all, you've got to look at the source. And as we've said in this program over and over again, Guyana has an 1,100 kilometer border with Brazil, one of the world's largest exporters of small arms, a manufacturer of small arms, particularly one called Taurus pistol or revolver. And many of those weapons come in illegally because people in the gold and diamond mining areas use the guns for personal protection because of the inadequacy of the Guyana police force. In addition to that, we have had a cocaine trafficking problem for several years. And cocaine is highly lucrative, it's a very profitable business. That's why people go into it. Millions of dollars could be earned illegally, and of course, thousands of people around the world get killed all the time because of protection of the cocaine trade. But in Guyana, people bring in illegal firearms to protect the trade. What you want to do is kill your rifles, people who are trying to take over the villages or the communities you control. What you want to do is prevent people from going on your territory and protect your profits. So people bring in guns and they actually recruit. Very frequently we've discovered in our research that former policemen are paid high salaries. You know, maybe the police force, you get $50,000, they can easily give you $150,000. And former policemen go and work for minors or drug traffickers. So there is a steady flow of illegal firearms into the country. In addition to that, the government over the years, particularly under previous Minister of Home Affairs, you know, used to issue licenses to party supporters. And many of them don't need firearms for personal protection. And they were given firearms, and sometimes they lose the firearms, and then the firearms fall into the hands of crooks. So when you give somebody a firearm, if he's not competent or careful, that firearm now becomes a target for, you know, robbery by a crook. We say, hey, so-and-so's got a firearm, let me go and try to get it. And of course the person cannot protect himself, or he leaves the firearm carelessly at home under his mattress, a secret place under his mattress. Of course the crooks know where to go for it, and a lot of weapons which are lost or stolen or carelessly misplaced are taken by crooks. So you have a wash of firearms. What David Granger administration would do is protect our borders to prevent illegal firearms from coming into the country, seize firearms, reduce the amount of firearms issued, but in so doing, we have to strengthen the police force to protect our own citizens. You see what happened recently in Florida? Too many people running around with guns. Once you have so many guns, people are going to get shot. And we saw a situation there in which a man, a legitimate gun owner, felt he was threatened by a person who looked suspicious. And the boy, because he's just a boy, lay dead. And this is what happens in Guyana. People do not need firearms, but they want to use the firearms as protection or as prestige. You know, he's a bad man, he's got a gun, you know. And the result of that is there's too many guns in the country. And it's a small country. And we need to make the police force more efficient to protect not only business persons, but also households which are victims of armed robbery. So that is the first thing I would do. Reduce the flow of illegal guns into the country. There's no point trying to deal with the guns once they come in the streets of Georgetown. You deal with them on the border. Stop them from coming in so we won't have the gun problems here. That's the great David Granger solution.
Good solution. What I'm going to come to now, and it's probably a cycle, because people in Guyana, it's a fact, and I can say this being probably a victim of a robbery, twice mind you, people in Guyana are not safe. And how do you convince an ordinary person, of course that is not meant to take away anything from our citizens, but how do you convince an ordinary citizen that, look, you don't necessarily need a gun to protect yourself? Because people are going down that road now. People are saying, you know, the police can't protect me. I might as well go out there and see if I can get a licensed firearm at least. How do we deal with that?
The police can't protect the citizens because the police force is rotten. For 14 years, the People's Progressive Party Civic Administration has pretended that it was serious about police sector, security sector reform. I can give you a list of all of the British teams and consultants which have come into this country in order to propose plans. Even Mr. Jagdeo went up to Scotland Yard. He spoke to Barnes Amos. Teams came down. I met several of the teams because I have some experience in security when they came down here. And none of the plans has been effectively enforced. And the problem is that the PPP seems to be afraid of the Guyana police force. It came in with this fear. It always accused the Guyana police force of being friendly to the PNC while it was in opposition. When it came into government in 1992, it has been very reluctant to reform the police force. It feels that if the police force becomes strong and efficient, it wouldn't be compliant. And that is why they try to have weak commissioners, and that is why they try to meddle with the leave that is given to officers, meddle with officers' promotion, meddle with the officers' transfer. That is one of the big problems in the police force now, the micromanagement of the professional arm of the security apparatus by political people. So when you look at what is happening at the hinterland, we have a lot of crimes of banditry. Look at what is happening along our coast and our rivers. We have crimes of piracy. You ask the police force how many boats they have. Ask them if there is an anti-pirate unit. Ask them, how strong is the police marine unit. Look at the hinterland. We hear about crimes of robbery, crimes of trafficking in persons. Ask the police force, well, how many people have you actually got in Region 7? How many people have you got in Region 8? How many people have you got in Region 9? And you see that it is it's a joke. They just do not have enough policemen on the ground to maintain law and order. So the guns keep coming in, contraband keeps coming in, and the police force are too small, too few in number to control these crimes. So the PPP, as a matter of policy, has deliberately kept the police force weak. The salaries are low, so the policemen are tempted to take bribes. The deployment, the strength is low. I think the strength is the police force is about 20% under strength. So you just don't have enough trained policemen. The quality of training is poor, and that there are some crimes that they can't deal with, domestic violence, banditry, and piracy. The police are just not capable at present of dealing with the crime situation in Guyana, and this is largely because of the decision of the PPP administration to keep a man like Mr. Clement Rohi there, even though the National Assembly has passed a vote of no confidence, a resolution of no confidence against it. And the decision of the PPP to keep the police force weak. The police force is not strong enough, is not capable of dealing with this crime surge.
Okay. So recently, of course, as we had this, what seems to be an upsurge in attack on businesses, we heard, and unfortunately, where an ordinary citizen was in one of the business entities that was attacked, and he unfortunately was fatally shot. Now, we saw some response coming from Mr. Leroy Brummel, who is the Commissioner of Police, and one of the things that he said, look, Guyanese, not necessarily in so many words, but Guyanese need to start learning to protect themselves. He even gave an example of about if you're in a store and you see someone acting a bit suspicious, you should probably leave the store. My question to you, sir, is wouldn't that be in a sense giving criminals some sort of a free rein, because you're basically saying that Guyanese people should restrict themselves? Can we live like that?
No, we can't live like that, and I don't agree with the advice that the Commissioner of Police is attempting to give. He's trying to maybe transfer responsibility for crimes to the victims of the crimes. It is the state that is responsible for protecting its citizens. I call it R2P, responsibility to protect. And what we need is an efficient police force, so that people who are charged with committing offenses are brought before the courts and are punished. But at the same time, when you look at the volume of crime, we need to ask ourselves about causation. Why are so many crimes taking place? And we will see that there are social problems. It doesn't mean that every time we come upon a community that is poor, there will be criminality. But when you look at the police behavior towards poor people, you see that there is a growing feeling of anger. And I mentioned particularly a community like Agricola. I don't want to mention other communities because I don't want to go down the road of profiling communities or residents of those communities. But when you go into those communities, you speak to the residents, and the youngsters will tell you how the police behave. I've been in some areas, the police would just go through a street and park in the middle of the street. They wouldn't pull over. It is not a courteous police force. It's not a police force that is committed to service investigation. It's a brutish police force that the villagers come into contact with. And for the last 14 or 15 years, particularly during the presidency of Mr. Bar Jagdeo, we saw the police using this brute force method. In fact, he once gave a speech to the Caribbean police commissioners, almost advocating brute force measures. And it's something we must look at. The police force always felt that they could go through villages on the East Coast, throwing tear smoke, shooting people with pellets. And this is what triggers the angry response. And many people have no faith in the police force. They dislike the police force intensely. In fact, I would even say that in some villages, the police force are worse than the criminals. And we have to look at that. The other point I'd like to mention, and I don't think we should leave this discussion without digging deeper into what I call causation. Too many youngsters in this country are dropping out of school. They can't find jobs. And as a result of that, some of them are being sucked into crime. Some of them go into the hinterland, but some of them end up working for unscrupulous criminals as or messengers or runners, lackeys, whatever you choose to call it. But some of them get involved in criminal activities because they can't get a job elsewhere. And it's a problem we have to look at. We have to try to remove the social causes of crime. And my approach is to emphasize the importance of education, try to keep children in school as long as possible so they qualify. When they leave, they can become self-employed, or they could be employed in other enterprises. I mean, you wouldn't find somebody with, a BA degree or BSc degree in economics, picking up a gun every night. I mean, I'm not saying that an educated person is unlikely to commit offenses, but the types of offenses we're talking about are normally committed by desperados. People who are desperate, and sometimes they really don't mind if they go in prison. It costs $350,000 to keep one person in prison a year. So we're filling up our prisons, and as I pointed out before, the director of prisons himself said that 3 out of 4 inmates are young persons. And that's what is happening. And we need to not only do more patrols around the city, we need to stop weapons coming in, we need to reform the police force and remove the causes of criminal violence.
If I can ask you a bit, and you did mention it earlier, about the CCTV cameras. Now, we've had several instances where the citizens are questioning, there was a robbery here, a robbery there, or a killing here, or a killing there. Why did the CCTV cameras not pick up these activities of criminals? But earlier in this week also, there was this big splash, an admission that the CCTV apparently is not under the Guyana police force. It's they're answerable, or those persons who were operating it are answerable to the office of the president. Your thoughts on that entire situation, sir?
Well, we have a situation in which the security apparatus has been heavily politicized. I myself cannot say who the National Intelligence Unit is under. What I can say is that there is a difference between the political officials and professional officers. As far as I can see, the political officials must give guidance. They must, they have to come to the National Assembly, they have to seek votes, voted provisions, not votes, voted provisions to ensure that the departments under their charge are efficiently financed. And they would give directions, for example, the acquisition of equipment, the areas of focus, the protection of the mining community, and so on. But they are not involved in the day-to-day operational management of the forces. Now, what we find happening in the Ministry of Home Affairs, they create something called the community policing. Community policing is not a unit. It is meant to be a function. It is a relationship between the community and the police. But the Ministry of Home Affairs completely misinterpreted what community policing is about and set up a unit, and they run the unit from the, instead of leaving the community policing function to be as a, at the community level, they've set it up as a department, the Customs Anti-Narcotics Unit. Instead of allowing it to be brought under the law and to be given equipment and resources, the officers appointed, just like the police or the army, they bring it under the Ministry of Home Affairs. And this is what is happening with all the other areas of security. That the government wants to exercise political control. Nobody knows who is the head of this National Intelligence Unit. Is the person trained in intelligence matters? Has the person been implicated in some visa fraud at the United States Embassy? You don't know where these people are coming from. So there's no confidence in it. And we have no confidence in the Minister of Home Affairs to run these units. We don't know how they're being run. There's no statute, there's no law, there's no act. So we have great difficulty with how the security sector is being administered. It is too politicized, and as a result of that, it is inefficient. It is not fulfilling the purpose for which it's been established.
Earlier, when you were talking about gun running, and you mentioned that one of the ways to stop it is by protecting our borders. It comes back to finances. Can we afford to, financially, I mean, to protect our borders? Or I should ask you, how expensive is it to protect our borders?
Well, my usual response is, can we afford not to? There's a saying in education, if you think education is expensive, try ignorance. And I think if you think that security is expensive, you'll try lawlessness. And we are spending more money trying to arrest people, trying to take them before the court. As I said, it takes $350,000 to maintain one prisoner per year in the Georgetown prisons. Yes, we can afford it. We cannot afford to postpone or delay the implementation of a serious security sector reform action plan. The problem is that we do not have confidence in Mr. Lohi's ability to enforce such a plan. I don't know if he has interest, I don't know if he has the will, I don't know if he has the knowledge to enforce that. But it has to be brought to an end because it's scaring people. It's scaring young people, young university graduates who want to settle down, get married, get children, get a house and a car, ordinary values. But they say, look, I better go to Barbados, I better go to Bahamas. This place is too, it's too freaky, and sooner or later they're going to get shot. People who want to come into the country to invest, they look at the daily reports, get petrol station robbed, jewelry robbed, boutique robbed, household appliances store robbed. So this is not the place for me. Because the business persons, and I'm concerned not only about business persons, I'm concerned about ordinary people too. They have to spend money with security guards. They have to put up special lights. They have to acquire equipment. And the cost of doing business in Guyana is higher than safer countries because they have to spend so much money, doing things other than promoting their business. If you are, I passed some enterprises down in Georgetown there. Sometimes outside that enterprise I see about 4 persons with some massive shotguns. I don't know if you've seen it. As if they're going to war. But the point is that if the state cannot provide protection for citizens and business persons too, who are entitled to protection, they will have to protect themselves. And in protecting themselves and doing so, they would end up incurring costs which are passed on to the customer. And when it becomes unbearable, they pull out and go to a safer country.
In Guyana, we like to boast about tourists coming here, and we're developing in terms of becoming a tourism destination. And you touched on it a bit just now, investors coming to Guyana. And one of the ways that we know to develop Guyana is by allowing foreign investors to come in. Do you believe that now Guyana is in this situation foreign investors are likely to want to come here to help to develop our nation, of course, to help to develop themselves by starting their businesses too. How do we deal with that? Are we in a position to accommodate them?
We can only accommodate them if we change the security environment. People are not fools. Nowadays, information is transmitted at the speed of light. You could be sitting in the National Assembly discussing a matter, and almost in real time, people in Latam around the world know what you're saying, what you're doing. Before you leave the chamber, people can call you up and say, man, you gave a good speech or a bad speech, whatever it is, you know. Business persons who want to invest, just go on the internet. And they say, well, what's going on here? Robberies, domestic violence, gang attack. And they say, no, this doesn't seem to be a safe destination. So we cannot hide the truth from investors any longer. Even if we could have done it years ago, we cannot do that. We have to run a clean ship. We have to make sure that the countries run along orderly lines, and there are orderly countries. Barbados is an orderly country, Bahamas is an orderly country. I mean, I'm not saying that you don't have people riding bicycles out like, but you do not have the type of daily, what they call everyday criminal violence. And we have violence in this country every day. If it's not domestic, it's banditry. If it's not banditry, it's piracy. If it's not piracy, it's armed robbery. And we have about nearly 3 armed robberies every day. So that is the reality of life in Guyana. You can't hide it. It goes into the newspaper. Which editor, you know, who hears there's an armed robbery, you know, would not publish the news? You can't conceal it. Why should he? It's the truth.
Finally, sir, it's been more than a year, a little over a year, since the opposition has filed a no confidence motion against Mr. Clement Rohi, Home Affairs Minister Mr. Clement Rohi. I know you're probably tired of answering this question, but he is still sitting there. What next? Can APNU and David Granger do, or are you planning to do anything else to address this matter, this whole Rohi issue, and not only the Rohi issue, but security in Guyana?
Well, we have made it clear to the People's Progressive Party Civic Administration that we have no intention of supporting measures brought to the National Assembly by Rohi. And as we speak, you know, several bills that he attempted to bring before the National Assembly have been defeated. And this is not by APNU alone, this is APNU and AFC. We are really convinced that he is not a fit and proper person to administer our security in the first instance, and you know, we have not changed that position. And we feel that the authority of the National Assembly must be respected. That if the representatives of the people, the majority of people, express they have no confidence in the minister, well, that must be respected. It is not a fickle or capricious decision, a whimsical decision. We just woke up one morning and said we don't like Clement Rohi. There is evidence of his performance over 6.5 years. And we said, this is not the person who should look after security, and we need that to be respected.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. This has been another program of the public interest. I am Malika Ramsey, and of course this has also been Mr. David Granger, leader of the People's National Congress Reform and leader of the opposition. Until next time, I am Malika Ramsey. Thanks for watching.